Today, I want to talk about soul creation, amount of souls, bombardment of tech, and crypto. I'm also going to mention a comment that came in on my Rumble. So we're going to continue with the comments and see where this goes. But this would be pretty much everything that I wanted to answer in one video. All right, so there's something that came in on my Rumble a little while ago, which I found was interesting. It had once again to do with the Soul Trap, or rather Soul Trap community. Yet another psyop. If you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. And the person saying the Soul Trap concept in general is an attribute of simulation theory in general. Anytime you have a simulation as a supposition, you'll automatically start to wonder what the parent reality is and what it would take to switch. So just like a Matrix movie, pretty much, right? Simulation theory also isn't the only type of belief system which could have an attribute like that. Plato's cave supposed a different reality, and of course, Plato belonged to a group or cult, depending on who described it, that believed that any object type had a template that was used to write out all instances. I don't know if I discussed it in that video or the one after. Plato's cave was something entirely different. And from what I've gotten on it, it had nothing to do with the soul trap theory at all. It was just a completely different scenario that soul trappers like to push into the soul trap theory to undermine their case, or just kind of highlight their case. But Plato's cave analogy was something entirely different. It was almost like a different reality in and of itself. And let's go on with this comment. I could know much more about this, but what I know of philosophy in general is just from tons of reading and not trying to understand its hierarchy and overall development comprehensively. Yeah, I agree with that. There's a hierarchy to all of these things. And I want to say it with the cult theory of Plato, there's just so many cults going on, right? Like the entire gods that were worshipped in a certain island, Aphrodite's worshipped or used to be worshipped like a few thousand years ago. All of that was just, people describe it as a cult now. So it makes you wonder in 1,000 years from now whether or not they're going to describe this entire soul trap community as a cult as given, which, as I've already said in many videos, it is a cult theory because the way people act when you question them is very much the same as when they're questioned when they're in a cult mentality. Let's put it that way. They didn't have computers, so the best they could do was give examples of casting shadows on the wall in a cave versus stepping out of a cave. I'm not even sure what they were trying to get across, same. But maybe it was their attempt to undo belief programming of some sort or another in order to have students from different areas attend classes without fighting with each other. I think you would have to go back to that time and see exactly what people were fighting against or what exactly the arguments were back then. But even back then, in that era, you had slaves, you had people who thought they were superior to others, you had the entire, different races, different this, like, oh no, just because you're from there means you're not good, and all of those things. Because in the essence of it, people haven't really changed that much. Fashion has changed. The way people might think has for sure changed, especially over these past 100 plus years. But in the essence of it, people are still people. People used to gossip back then. People used to gossip 400 years ago. People still like to gossip nowadays. Like the core values of people, it's just the same. It recycles itself over and over and over and over again, which is also why it's so hard to break those intergenerational curses or behaviors, because a lot of it is being passed on from one generation to another. And that's why people are acting the way they do act now, especially if they are like from a certain country as opposed to another country. And, there's so much that goes into that in and of itself too. But people have always been people, let's put it that way. People have been, I do think, more brutal back in the days than they are now. Like if you look at the Mayans or Incas and all of those, any type of tribe, there was a form of brutality that perhaps you don't necessarily see nowadays, especially in westernized, well, depends on where you go. I don't want to overgeneralize again, but you do certainly can still find that in third world countries, depending on where you go there too. And so, people have always been at war with each other in one form or another. So yes, I do agree with that. Then there's the oneness versus individualism concepts, dualism versus monism. I was just listening to a guy yesterday on here talk about how we decided we were lonely and decided to become individuals. If that was the case, then we would have made up rules on a much lower level to run the simulation, like designing a 3D engine. If you wanted something different, you'd have to start over from scratch, and it becomes a question of now what. I don't know who that person is or who they're referring to, but I do think we have entered different simulations. For example, where we were 2000 years ago is not the same simulation we are in now. They are overlapping to a certain degree. And if you go to certain areas in the world, the Middle East being a major one, by the way, you can feel the power and energy of a different simulation in it. And it's very hard to imagine for people who've never visited those places, just like it was very hard for me to imagine until I finally went there. Because it's not just something you can pick up through the screen or you can pick up from other people's tales. You actually have to experience it in person. At least that's what I strongly believe. And so yeah, it's almost like I already said in one of the Gaza videos that I had, one of the 3 that I had last year, there are portals open to these different realities, to these different, what could now be called simulations, or call them whatever, to these different things of a virtual game. I have to make sure that this thing is loading because technology has been giving me the biggest trouble, and other people too, but it's just all these things are throwing at you, like AI is tech, all of that. So we do have these portals to the different realities, to the different simulations, and a lot of them are in the Middle East, which is also why the Middle East is almost always under bombardment, and it has been for a very long time, for a few thousand years. Some people say the cradle of humanity is in the Middle East. I would, to a certain extent, agree with that. But if you go to every single civilization out there, it always seems like there's something that pinpoints to the cradle of humanity. If you go to Peru, you have a similar like that. But I just feel those are different realities that were birthed in those areas. And I do strongly believe that some areas are older than others, and you can feel that power when you're there. But I might want to talk about that in a different video because it's very specific to the area. The person is also saying, I think truther could be more descriptive. Everybody wants to feel like they understand something about underlying reality. And truther sounds like something either a group would call themselves or someone used as a sarcastic term. It isn't a good term for overall categorization of a belief system. Yeah, I like to call those people mistruthers just because they like to misinform people. Or they just don't dig deep enough, let's put it that way. Okay, so we're gonna head on to other comments. Let me pull a few up. There was one about crypto. Here's one that I want to do first, though. The person saying Cliff High does nice videos titled "Defend Your Hippo." I think hippocampus is what he means. It's about how chemtrails and how they use aluminum to destroy our hippocampus. I sell nootropics on Amazon, NSI 189, and Noopept help create a new neuron in your hippocampus. But all nootropics, so it's NOO, nootropics, are helpful. I also like the Racetams, Godu Cola, and Huperzine or Hyperzine. They're all herbals that can help. And to mention EMF, it also destroys hippocampus neurons, or our hippo is always under attack. This is planned, of course. The hippocampus holds our memories, so dementia, Alzheimer's, etc., are a result of hippo loss. Stay sharp, stay focused. Makes a lot of sense. I have nothing to add to that other than creating new neural pathways. Like once you find out how to do that, people say you can create those through sports or through other activities, not just through moving, but movement is a huge component to that. That would probably be helpful nowadays anyhow. Also oiling our neural pathways. You need the right type of nutrition for that. And a lot of our nutrition is depleted, as I already said in previous videos. You know, we're lacking at least 3 or 4 what is it called? I mean, it was the magnesium, it was other things, you know, the calcium, magnesium, and other things, which was it the biofield? I'll link the biofield video, but there was one of these videos where we had mentioned a few of those components that over the past, I want to say 10, 15 years, for sure 5 years, but 10, 15 years, a lot of people are just lacking. It's just systematically eradicated out of our diets. And we somehow have to add those again, because those can also probably help with the neural pathways. They can probably help with a lot of things, but for sure they can help with the EMF radiation, because what the radiation does is it depletes us even more of that. And that is also a really interesting topic. So if you want to go deeper with that, definitely let me know, comment below. We have one from Pamela. The US currency is literally backed by nothing anymore, as went off the gold standard in the 70s with Nixon. Yeah, that's correct. But no single country is backed by anything. Like, you forgot to mention that. I'm just going to read this comment and then add my comment. Sure, you've got the trust of the US government behind it, but that also comes with over 34 trillion in debt and counting. The bigger question really is, what is actual money? An exchange or really something more? Cryptocurrency may be a scam in your opinion, not just my opinion. Everyone who informs himself about this knows it's a scam. But folks are still making money regardless, and everything is digital to track us by design. Be a part of it or not. I personally choose not to be a part of it. Glad you were able to detach from things for a bit, and so on. Yeah, so the problem is, and this is the problem I really have with people who don't understand cryptocurrency, also Forex, by the way. Forex is another one that gets my blood boiling, because you have, every time you have a Telegram group, you always have these scammers, like actual spam accounts, spam and scam accounts, who try to weasel their way in and direct you towards a Forex group or a crypto group. And those are actual bots. They're not actual people. But basically that in and of itself should already tell you how much of a scam crypto and Forex is. Forex is a little bit different than crypto. I know it's not one and the same thing. What you're saying with the US currency not being backed by anything anymore, meaning no gold, that is correct. Nixon was the person who got rid of that in the 70s. But if you look it up, you can go to Google, you can go to DuckDuckGo, wherever you want to go, look up any country that is still backed by gold, you will find zero. Zimbabwe recently, very recently though, at least at the time I'm recording this video, is now deciding to be backed by gold again. And Zimbabwe's currency has changed so frequently over the past few years, or, you know, the past few decades anyhow, that, you know, it's an attempt. How that's going to go, we don't know, because obviously a lot of government officials who are on the right side in Zimbabwe are either going to be, you know, killed off, or they're just not going to exist anymore. They're going to be disappearing out of the public eye. So Zimbabwe in general has a history of that. If you look up Zimbabwe or any African country that tries to do that, it's interesting that they're trying to go back to the gold backing in Zimbabwe, and in my opinion it's a great idea, but there's no country out there other than that one that is backed by anything. So your entire reasoning in terms of you just got the trust of the US government. Well, in Germany, you have the trust of the German government. You know, in Australia, you have the trust of the Australian government. It doesn't matter which country you go to, China, Japan, it's all just the government that's behind the money. We have what, 195, 196, 97 officially recognized countries, every single one except for Zimbabwe at this point, which can change very quickly, as we've seen in the past. All of them are not backed by anything. So just saying the US government is the only one or a major one is incorrect. It's every single country out there. That is not a reason for me to run over to cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency is not backed by anything either, as you must have somehow known. It's called, all of these things are called fiat money, and you can do your research on that as well. Now, you know, I'm not super passionate about it, but it does piss me off when people try to, you know, smartass their way through being like, oh, it's not backed by anything in the US. Yeah, it's correct, but no, nowhere it's backed. They're almost universally backed by the governments that issue them. And cryptocurrency is, let's just look at the definition, a digital or virtual currency secured by cryptography, okay, which makes it nearly impossible to really trace back what exactly is going on, where is it going to. They say it's impossible to double spend. I don't believe that. Most cryptocurrencies exist on decentralized networks using blockchain technology, which is enforced by a network of computers. So basically it's nothing. It's it's not even anything you can hold in your hands, okay? Your banking system, your computer system's down, your cryptocurrency's down. And of course, they want everything to be online. We've seen that over the past 4 years or so. That's not rocket science. The matter is, why do they want to push everything online? Why do they want everything in this AI tech world? We're talking about tech right now, tech not working, because they want to pull the plug on you eventually. They want you in the credit score, in the social credit system, where if you do one wrong thing, your cryptocurrency is going to be deducted like 30, 40, 50 points, or just as an example. So no, excuse me, that's not a reason enough for me to jump from a government-backed money source to a cryptocurrency source, which is the reality they want. And by they, it's the matrix controllers that I'm talking about. So it's an interesting topic. There's so much that goes into it. I keep recommending Alison McDowell. She had fabulous videos on it for the past 4 years already. She doesn't necessarily talk about that in and of itself anymore the past year or so, but she has videos in her archive. So you can just go to her YouTube channel. She shows exactly what's wrong with blockchain technology, more so than I could ever show. And these are people who have done actual research on it. And this is not just an issue in westernized countries, but they're actually going more towards the poorer countries, meaning the third world countries, because those are the people who they don't have an option. If they want to get paid just by playing video games with cryptocurrency, whatever, they will play along because they don't have any other option to make money in those countries. And so there's this entire thing, like this entire mafia that's going on, but you would have to do actual research on it. And it seems a lot of people who are doing this crypto research don't do enough research on it. So please do your research. Okay, there was another good comment. You have asked this question many times in your videos. The number of gods in Hinduism is mentioned as 33 crores, C-R-O-R-E-S. I'm not sure if that's pronounced the right way. But Hindus argue that it's actually 33 types of gods or titles or positions. However, if you consider it as a number, it translates to 330 million. So 330 million organic souls out of 8 billion people, roughly 4%. Now, finally got a number. Okay, so that would mean we're dealing with 4% of the population being organic or having a soul. However, keep in mind, I don't think the 8 billion is an actual number that we're dealing with. I think we're way less people, judging by how I keep seeing the same people over and over again in the largest city here in the US. Aside from my neighbors, even if I go to different areas in New York City, let's just say I went to the Bronx or I went to Staten Island, I keep seeing the same people. Like, it's just insane, right? So for me, it means, and also when I go elsewhere to other places other than Cairo and Egypt, which was really so busy, and probably other than India too, whenever I go to other places, it's empty, completely empty. So I don't even know if it just feels the entire numbers are fabricated. But it's interesting to know that there's 330 million, possibly 330 million organic souls. And we have to find out like the real numbers, I find. But that is mentioned in Hinduism, which could be another clue to things. Oh, this one's a good one. This was about music. The music from the 90s was very funky, chill, and high vibration. It was the original classic house genre that came out of Chicago. Listen to Frankie Knuckles, Marshall Jefferson, Mr. Fingers. And in those days, turntables played vinyls at 33.3 RPM. To which I commented, not even related to this, but I just recently found out that rap actually stands for rhythm and poetry. The entire rap music that's now completely infested with Illuminati symbology. Well, every single one is, even pop music. but rap and possibly hip hop, it actually stood originally for rhythm and poetry. Totally forgot about that. I think I learned that somewhere when I was 12 years old, and I completely forgot about it or didn't know what to do with it. And this is what I'm saying, you can learn all these things, but when you're too young or you don't really care about them, they're kind of going to go in one ear and go at the other ear, because you don't have the capacity. You need a certain maturity to grasp certain concepts as well. And I feel that's how it is with a lot of these spiritual concepts too, that if you learn them when you're too young and you don't really understand what they're about, not necessarily music or rap, but in general, all these spiritual concepts we've been discussing the past few weeks, it almost doesn't matter, because when you're younger, you're influenced, especially in your teenage years, you're so influenced by hormonal things and this and that, where you're not going to have the head. You're going to have the head for other things. You want to know more about who am I going to date next, or how am I going to do in this school test, those type of things, depending on your age. So we need a certain maturity or capacity in our lives where we're not constantly busy, distracted, or going through other things. Hormonal changes are one of them, though. And in order to do that, we need to be of a certain age. At least that's my strong opinion in regards to it. Here is another one. I think this person is from Poland, about alcohol in general. Europe seems to be divided on that subject. The South prefers wine, the West prefers beer, and the East prefers vodka. That's true. All the Slavic countries prefer vodka. Personally, I and my friends always preferred vodka, but we never mixed it with anything other than juice, cola, beer, and fruit vodka. I grew up from it, and the more aware I am, the less my tolerance for alcohol is. Now I have a hangover from one beer. Well, I think alcohol has also changed over the past 20 plus years, to be fair. I know for sure alcohol in the US is completely different from European alcohol. And I noticed that because when I was younger, I was doing like one semester in Florida, and then I went back to Heidelberg in Germany. And I always had the worst hangovers from alcohol here in the US. And then once I was in Europe again, it was better. So it seems like the regulations in the US, it's similar with food, all the chemicals that are in food. I feel it's similar to the alcohol. But overall, it can also be that alcohol all over, not just in the US, but even in Europe, could have changed like the regulations in terms of that. And I do think what people were drinking a few hundred years ago, it was possibly not the same that we're drinking nowadays. Was it still better? Probably not. I mean, spirits are always not great, right? Like spirits can call in spirits that can occupy your body if you drink too much. So let's continue with the comment. I read that these spirits, meaning wine, vodka, beer, were brought here from heaven or from the heavens. Fascinating that gods who gave us technology also gave us the most dangerous drug. That says something about their intentions. I'm not sure which culture it is, if it was one of the South American ones again, but I think this was mentioned when the South Americans where one entity was giving them alcohol or something. I don't know which one. I don't know if it was the Mayans, or can't always blame everything on the Mayans, right? But some Central or South American one where this story would make a lot of sense. But other than that, I'm not sure of any other stories. I am also not sure if wine and beer qualify as spirits. For sure, the ones that are like tequila, vodka, rum, everything. Wine and beer are made a bit differently. But I mean, of course, they can call upon entities too, especially if you drink in a lot. Vodka had a devastating effect in Poland during the, I want to say whatever the Soviet occupation was. It was promoted back then. Everyone knows someone whose relative overdosed, was aggressive, ended up homeless. Yeah, because of it. Luckily, alcohol never caused aggression in me, just made me feel tired and turned up a feeling I already had. So it works like a parasitic being. About AI stare. My friends always told me I have eyes that pierces the soul and that I can look through them. So maybe I'm AI, maybe. But what I found interesting with alcohol is also, I was recently again in a situation like this is in the summer. I was in Central America, Nicaragua, and you have a lot of Europeans traveling there, especially in the summer, because they're in between universities or whatever, in between jobs, who even knows. But I found myself in this group, very mixed group of like 2 Brits, one guy from Liechtenstein, which was funny because he spoke German, but not really. One girl from Switzerland, one girl from Germany, and I forgot where the other one was from, but they were all European. And they were younger than me, you know, they were definitely in their 20s. Some of them had literally just completed their studies, were going to go on to a job or find a job or whatever. And every single one of them, because I was the only one who wasn't drinking in that group, every single one of them tried to give me crap for not drinking. Like these two Brits, they were like, if they were not, one of them was a nurse. It was so bizarre. One of them was a nurse, and she's like, if she, like, she just started a new job, you know, like a year ago or whatever, if she had not drank on that first week she had the job, like supposedly it's common where she was to do the job, and then the entire staff or whatever goes out and drinks, and then they meet each other next day for the job again. If she had not been a part of that, they would have never accepted her socially in that circle or group or whatever. And I'm just like, that is the saddest thing I've ever heard. Because even though in America, you can also go to certain areas such as Texas or the South in general. I find the South is way more alcoholic than the North. It's just my personal impression I have from, you know, being in Texas and other places. But if you do go to certain areas, it's true, people are more alcohol dependent on the social circus and everything. But I feel it's changed a lot, especially where I am. And for sure, it's just the entire attitude also with the younger generation, like people who are in their 20s now. I feel it's completely different. You know, there are places now that are completely sober, like sober bars. True, you pay the same for a drink, like a non-alcoholic cocktail, $13 or whatever, than you would for a regular cocktail, which I refuse to do. I'm like, I'm not paying for a non-alcoholic, and I'm not paying for an alcoholic, so I'm not paying for anything there because it's ridiculous. It's literally just like fruit juice punched with different things. But when she told me that, I was shocked. I would have never survived in Great Britain nowadays if I were to ever go there, find a job or whatever. I mean, it's just sad. But it was similar from the other Europeans, you know, it was similar from the Swiss girl, couldn't live without her wine, similar from the others. Like a lot of them, like the German and Liechtenstein people, it was all about the beer and this and that. And I'm like, you're just so socially conditioned to think you can't survive without your beer. Once you actually go somewhere where beer is not that much of a thing, such as, you know, I mean, I don't want to say America because people drink a lot of beer here too, but where beer doesn't even taste as good as it does in Europe, it becomes completely irrelevant. Let's put it that way. So I found it interesting. Maybe it was just the particular group that I had encountered that was more that way, or maybe in general, people's attitudes haven't really changed that much in certain areas of Europe. But also when I was like in the Mediterranean a lot last year and this year, it's always like you always have to over justify yourself for why you don't want to drink, as opposed to people just accepting that you don't want to drink, right? And I feel that's a strong component of people being addicted to their alcohol, when they can't accept another person not wanting to drink. Okay, so that was a little bit of a rant on alcohol. Oh, here's a really good one. The Georgia Guidestones had a hole to view Polaris. Since they promote heliocentrism, Polaris or Polaris would have moved since it has been 40 years, and it did not. Heliocentrism is a superseded astronomical model in which the Earth and planets revolve around the sun at the center of the universe. And it was opposite to geocentrism, which placed the Earth at the center. At this point, I think we have to go back to geocentrism, because the Earth is at the center somehow. Otherwise, we wouldn't all be here, right? There's nothing outside of it. There's just AI outside of it. So I found that interesting too, that the heliocentristic view did not come true, kind of proving that we are in a geocentrist world in a form or another. Now, the Georgia Guidestones kind of reminded me of Rosetta Stone, which is this famous artifact that helped unlock the ancient Egyptian language of the hieroglyphs. And I think there's so much more that goes into Rosetta Stone, but it was just reminding me of that. And Polaris like this constellation in the sky. I think it's a constellation in the sky. Okay, here's one more in terms of the Lionsgate. The globalists believe in the Lionsgate, and it was in the Obama movie Leave the World Behind, as the white lion the name of the ship that had some seemingly IT outage. Yeah, this is how the Lionsgate is promoted over and over again in the mainstream. I'm mostly interested in this because the Kabbalah seemed to be acting out the Book of Revelation. So the second seal is the Israel-Iran war just now, waiting for the third seal, the final one, which is the financial reset to digital ID, CBDCs to usher in high inflation equaling famine. Yeah, this is what the entire crypto thing is about. You know, it's really supposed to usher in this entire digital ID world. Can you do anything against it? For sure. Just, you know, don't be a part of it. Like, refuse to simply do that. Just like I said in my video earlier this year, I went to this bathhouse. They said no cash, only card only. I paid in cash. They have to pay. They have to accept it, honestly. And I was like, yes, it seems that way. This entire Book of Revelation is just another script, though, they're giving us. It also said they're turning the US into a third world country. However, just because it's their script does not mean it has to turn that way. That was my comment that I had in regards to that. I have a friend, she really believes in this Book of Revelation thing. She's also very Christian, or, you know, whatever you, however you want to even say it, Christian, but then drinks alcohol. And I'm like, that doesn't really go together. Sorry. You know, you can't really constantly be attacked by spirits and all of that through your alcohol. And then, I mean, on the other hand, if they go to church, they're under attack anyhow, because they're under attack in the church. But she strongly believes in this Book of Revelation. And when she told me about it, I think it was like 3 years ago, because I'm not a part of any of these worlds. I was like, so they do want to turn the US into a third world country. That's interesting. That's why they're doing this entire border thing. And the US is the strongest country in the world right now. It's not China. It's not these other places people want to say it is. But whether or not they're going to succeed is another thing. There's always a chance to rewrite that script or not make it happen, or somehow oppose it or fight against that, right? Here's another one. Van Morrison is a bit of a mystic, and I've noted he mentions Avalon in a few of his songs. I haven't researched it, but there may be a place called Avalon in his country, Ireland. I think Avalon, the original one, was closer to Ireland, perhaps Scotland, England area, or it was just spread across those isles. I do think it was in those areas for sure. But you can even find Avalon named places all over Australia, which is the furthest it could ever be from Avalon. Let's put it that way. You can find them here in the US. I just came across another store that names itself Avalon something. And I remember being in Sydney, like around the Blue Mountain area. There's a lot of Avalon themes going on in one of those. I don't know if it was Wollongong or some other town. They had like 3 different Avalon themed stores and food shops and everything. And this is back in 2019. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've landed in Avalon, but not really. I think you can even can you find it in Northern Beaches? Somewhere around there. Not Bondi Beach, but somewhere in the Northern Beaches, like Manly. Okay, here is one. Kim Guggen claims Trump died right after he left office and Biden died prior to inauguration. Thus, the 3-gun burial salute at the inauguration. Whatever these people said, none of it really came true. You know, people were predicting this person wins, person never won. Then they were backpedaling, saying, no, I said they wouldn't win. They would just energetically win, blah, blah, blah. None of it came true. No one can really predict the future 100% because there's too much stuff that goes in it. Call it free will, call it just things like people's intentions interfering all the time, where you can kind of say, okay, 70% is going to go this way. But at the end of the day, we have way more say in the future, which is also why it's so silly to go to someone to predict your future when the surest way to predict your future is to simply create your future. And I feel that goes with every single thing, including politics. I had this video on Jonah Genton covering her eye. And we went through a few other people who were covering their eyes too. And one person was asking, are the ones covering the left side versus the right side representing different things? If anyone has an answer, comment below. I have not even looked into that some people just cover this one, other people just cover this one. It's a good question, because usually I think it is more of one side over the other, perhaps more of the right side, but it is a really, really good question. One person saying, Azazel, Michael, Yahweh, and Jesus Christ are all remixed versions of an ancient war deity called Ninurta. He is the dragon slayer. One of his symbols was the two-headed eagle. Yeah, a lot of countries have the eagle. I think Mexico has the eagle, the US has the eagle, Germany has the eagle too, as a symbol for their country. Not two-headed, but the eagle is coming up. Marduk is Ninurta syncretized with Enlil, and Ashur is Ninurta syncretized with An or On. The former is the god of Babylon, the latter of Assyria. Well, Babylon would be Iraq, and I guess Assyria would be what's now Syria or Lebanon. Yeah, also interesting topic. I personally haven't even dug into this. The entire Enlil thing kind of sounds like something Barbara Machinik would say. So I'm not sure how much gravity that holds, but it's an interesting topic for sure. Another person saying, again, the Jonah videos. I was also enjoying Jonah's videos for a long time, and I also discovered her back in 2017. I haven't noticed her sketchy thumbnail until you mention it. Your point of view does make sense. The only thing I don't get is why would she sell her soul for fame, money, and business success in this 3D material realm? Well, because these people, that's all that counts for these people. These people don't act on a soul level, even though they claim they do. The person goes on saying, your soul is the most valuable possession. Once you sell it, you sold it forever in all realms and in all dimensions, not just here on Earth. People who decide to do that have no idea and no clue what they're doing. Some could have been tricked to selling their soul and thinking they could get it back too, is what I was thinking about one person that I know. Or I don't know them in person, but like online. We could be talking millions of dollars, but it's literally like you sold it for a piece of paper or a chewing gum. There simply is no price for the soul. If she sold her soul, that only goes to show that she doesn't actually believe in all the things she's portraying through her videos and thinks that life on Earth is pretty much all there is. Yeah. I just reply, she probably doesn't believe anything really, because a lot of her videos look gray and lifeless to me energetically. And it's kind of like some people have more of this, when people are AI, that's kind of what the reality looks like that they're portraying. And it's hard to see through that when you still have, you're looking at it from a blinded perspective. But once you see the truth for what it is, you can't unsee it. Let's put it that way. And that's how it was when I looked at Jonah's videos. They seem so magical. They seem so they seem so whatever. But a lot of it, when you look at her micro expressions in her face, a lot of it actually show a pretty aggravated person too. But I had an entire video on her. We don't have to like do this again. My goodness, there are so many comments. I don't even think I'm going to go through them in this particular one. So let's do a few more. I had my belly button pierced, and when I went to an acupuncturist, she said to take it off since it disrupts our meridians, as well as an electronic watch I had. That was 20 years ago. I can't imagine what the smartwatches do now. Yeah, I had it. I don't know if I put it on this channel, but I for sure put it on Instagram, how smartwatches, the radiation it has. Was it 5 times as much? 5, 6, 7 times as much as we're supposed to have. And people are giving that to their kids these days. Unbelievable. Like unbelievable. Whenever I see that on an actual child or teenager, I just want to smack the parents or something. It's like, do you seriously not know what it does to the body, to the DNA, and these are children that are in development. Like not even as an adult you should have this, but for sure not as a kid. So but then people also give their kids cell phones, so what can you do, right? Like it's just no consciousness or awareness in regards to that. Here's one in regards to NPCs, synthetic souls. Aren't all NPCs synthetic souls? That's like the majority of people, right? A good comment here, depends on what you believe about the percentages. Of course, nobody believes they themselves are an NPC. It's very true. It also depends on whether you think NPCs have actual souls, synthetic or otherwise, or none at all. If the original answer was none at all, but now they're getting filled with synthetic souls, it all depends on what percentage you believe now contain synthetic souls. And I also replied, your son, daughter, relative, neighbor, coworker, grocery store worker, etc., can also be soulless. It's not just these background characters if that's what you're hinting at. And I feel a lot of people are just overwhelmed with that they're actually related to or living with NPCs or soulless beings because, oh no, how could my mom be one of them? Or how could my son or daughter be one of them? But we just have to face the reality. Not everyone around us is going to have a soul, right? And it's not just your neighbor, it's also people you're related to. Here's a comment about the cross. One thing I've been thinking about recently is what you said, the cross is negative. I've been thinking about it because it aligns with the Ankh. The same symbol has been portrayed from Egypt, Sumer, Easter Island, basically the ancient empire. It probably signifies the origins of our slavery here on Earth, the creation or altering thereof of the slave race present after the flood. I think they mean Noah's flood. Noah's flood was a different reality they were ushering in. I believe I had a video on that from early 2023. And the Ankh is a portal too. So the Ankh was used as a portal to see the astral realm. Surely when we're out of this physical existence, it can't mess with us to the same degree. I think I answered that in a different video. Just my opinion, the Matrix existed before Atlantis, but some of the evil ones took over. We were experiencing it very differently before that. Yeah, I had an Atlantis video on how the computer program got a bot in it, and it's basically just been on rewind or just on a virus infected version ever since. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that. Maybe I'll have another video with the rest of the comments or just put them all together at one point. I hope this helps someone. Thank you so much for watching this. Share your thoughts below. And until then.